This is the new Kovalchick display detailing the work of David and Stephen Kovalchick of Kovalchick Salvage Company over many years. This is the team that put together the archiving and then also the display we have here. As we go into this room, we look at the Sagamore Underground. This is where an enormous amount of coal was removed under the ground. These mines were used for many years. And this is important in the mining industry because this shows how they remove as much coal as they can, but leave enough behind to support the roof. Now, if there's junk or stone, they try to leave that, but a lot of times they have to leave some coal too to keep the roof from collapsing in on the gentlemen as they work. This map shows where Sagamore lies in relation to Dayton and some of the people who own properties in that area there. Sagamore mines were most active during World War I, but continued on for 20 years after that. At one point, the town had reached 3,000 people. This is the design for a tipple. Tipple is where the coal is brought to and is weighed. The workers are given credit for how much they brought to the surface, and then some processing happens to remove dirt and wash it away. And then in the end, it gets dumped into coal cars, which then continue to take it all away towards where it can be used for the next steps. This is some of the beautiful maps that show where different coal mining was done, related to, in this case, the Baltimore and Ohio coal ownership in the regions. And you can pause this if you want to read more details here. This takes us on to Kramer. This is another area of mining. Several of the people involved at the Historical Society own properties near these mines. But as you can see, large swaths of underground areas were removed to get to the coal. These are drillings which help them determine where it's best to get the coal out. Some of them imply there's sulfur in that area. Others are more rocky, so that they know where they should be aiming as they're working their way underground. This is another look at where some of these properties are working. Onondaga is down in this corner. Then we come to Sykesville, which was a very productive mining area. And then this is another area called Northwestern Mining Exchange. This is a mine map of the Reynoldsville and DuBois coal fields again, showing different groups as they approach them. And this is a more finely labeled drilling so that they would know what they were heading towards, what they might encounter as they were digging. As we'll see later, what's also important in the mines is not just the coal, but what else is there. Mr. Kovalchick told me that at the Sykesville mines, water was a major issue, and while they were salvaging, they could only remove so much stuff because at the very end, the pumps to remove the water, when the power was shut off, the mine rapidly filled with water. And to this day, it continues to have water pouring out of the mine through openings that the company had made for ventilation. This is one of the fun calendars that their company had given out as a promotional material. These are very popular. These 4 clowns are called the 4 Freedoms because their lifestyle, riding the rails, they hopped on passenger trains, gave them freedom to do as they pleased. They didn't need to worry about things like bills and permits and licenses. They had a code of honor just for themselves. They weren't really bums because they did work, but they could just take off at a moment's notice. This is some of the paperwork that was involved in running a business of these sizes. What I appreciate the most is the beautiful handwriting on just simple processes and the details that go into this. All these pieces are archived and are available for study if people have particular areas they would like to look into, particular years they were interested in making inquiries into. These are a little later in the 1940s when more typewritten work was done. These included fire bosses' daily reports. Something that would be very important is to have the safety of the mine. And these appear to be workers' wages with their name, their employee number, their rate of pay, and then how many weeks or hours they would have worked. So, very important to see all the work that went into making a mine a success. And they actually were creating the tools and equipment they needed as they went. These are some of the blueprints that were required. This was a specific type of coal cutter that would grind away at narrow portions of the coal where using TNT was not practical. In this photo, you can see these very short cars that were driven into low-lying mines so the men could get around without difficulty. And some of them were used then also on the surface, but you can see where they could have gone at least partway into the mines themselves. And this is deep cage mining. This is where they would have gone into the very depths of the mines, down by elevators. And here we have some plans for housing. Each of these mines had their own mining towns around them. And with populations, in several thousands, you would have had to been able to make and create housing for these people. As electricity and water came, then that was provided to the housing also. And there would have been bigger houses that were served as like having a matron and people living there, and also somewhat for an inn-type situation. This is a pamphlet made several years ago by Heather Heitzenreiter, and it's called A Place Called Home. If you stop by, you can pick up one and see exactly how some of these homes were designed and how they were used. But basically you can see basic homes, but not fancy. This is Tyler. This is another large area. Important in this area, this piece of blueprints is these are coke ovens all along here. And what we do in coke ovens is they take the coal, bring it to them, and process it to create a more clean and purified product that was then able to be used in the steel industry. And houses and things lined up by the roads of the towns. And here's some more blueprints for some very interesting pieces of equipment. And they were building electrical substations to bring electricity in, and some of the places were actually creating the electricity on site. This is Helvetia, another large area. Became one of its major groups and ran from 1891 to 1947. So it ended its run in 1954. And there were several miles of underground networks to access the coal. And as one area would peter out, they'd put their efforts into other areas. But you can see just the sheer amount of kind of roadways underground here. This next one is Sagamore. It's another very active mining area. This one had a 60-room hotel, so that the officials and construction foremen could come and go along with other people. There was a railway that came to them. And what you can see is that even in these towns, there was fire prevention, firemen's homes here, a hotel, a theater, another fire prevention area. About 5,000 people lived in this town at one point. So, included in that town was several churches, a Roman Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Greek Orthodox, and Methodist. They had an elementary and a high school, and were used until the 1950s. So these were not fly-by-night, short-lived things. Here you can see 3 miners working deep inside the mines. And this is a very nice tribute to Robert Johnson, showing how a tipple might work. The kind of raw coal is brought in at the top, it's washed, then brought over, and then dumped into trucks, later on directly into railroad cars, to be taken to where it was going to be used. Here we have examples of coal as it would have come loose from the walls. And then after it's treated, it expands a little bit and is more light and is used as coke. And that coke then goes on to be used in the production of steel. And here we have a very, very long auger bit. This was used to drill holes into the walls, and then black powder originally, and later on TNT, would have been used to put charges in that end of and then blow out the coal as they were able to remove it. As you can imagine, this was a very dangerous job. Here we have knee pads to help protect the guys who worked often on their knees for much of the day. This was a pneumatic drill that helped drill holes as time went on. Got to eat when you're in the mine. This was a lunch pail. The metal helped keep the dirt out of the food so they could enjoy it, and they could put their probably 2 meals in there, one morning one and an afternoon one. Here we have a wooden carrier for blasting caps. The wood would help reduce the risk of fire and the caps igniting themselves. This is a tin flask that would have held the gunpowder originally. Let me open the door here. Carbide is a thing that we refer to as limelight. A little bit of carbide is put in the bottom of this container and some water in the top. And as you're working, little drops of water go onto it. It releases a gas called acetylene, which comes out the front, and that's then lit. These would be worn most often, I believe, on the front of their helmets. And less fire hazard than an oil lamp that could spill and spread. If this spilled, a lot of it would have just dissipated rather quickly. There might have been a small amount of fire, but it would not have been much. But this was also used in theaters, and that's where we get people wanting to be in the limelight. This is a quilt that was dedicated to our coal heritage in this area. And there's Phil with his light. And there are some pretty neat postcards that have been transferred to fabric. Raker's Mill. Walston was famous for its coke ovens being so bright that they lit up the night sky. And it looked like dawn all the time. After the coke was done, they had to have men pull the coke out of the ovens, let it cool off, and then load it into other carts to be carried off to be used. We were very fortunate to have photography of the Onondaga mines. This gentleman, Nelson Miller, was a photography buff and took some really unique shots here. They were working inside the mine under the ground to repair this equipment. You couldn't bring it all the way back to the surface every time you needed to work on it, so they took right down to the bottom. This is a room where the coal is on the wall there, and they're getting ready to drill it out. And then once it's been drilled, you can see over here there's a lot of loose pieces on the ground. And that's the stuff that's going to be shoveled away, and then they'll have to drill more. First aid was important, and our first hospital here, Adrian Hospital, was paid for by the coal companies. This machine has a cutting blade on the front edge to help loosen the stuff, and the railroad ties would allow them to ride into it. That was the bigger picture on the wall over there. This shows you some of the remaining rock to help hold up the ceiling so that it's safe for the workers to be there. And this is one of the large pumps that's removing the water so that they can safely work there. And here is a generator, so they were creating their own electricity on site so that they could have a safe, steady supply of electricity. This shows you a little bit of the housing on the surface and where the guys would have lived in their time there. And this is a bigger model. This is a picture of the real thing, of the tipple, of how they would bring the coal in, wash it, and then send it out by railroad. So we'll just walk back to the beginning here. So many of us think of coal as being the coal that sit by Grandma's kitchen stove to cook with, but that's just a small portion of what this coal was used for, and much of it ended up on railroad cars being taken to big cities to be used as part of the process of creating the steel that drove the American growth in the 1800s. And this collection of documents was given to us by David and Stephen Kovalchick of the Kovalchick Salvage Company in Sykesville. And you can see at the bottom there the many people it takes to work on things of this magnitude. And we are grateful to have this information, and will be available for use to people in the future, including the DEP and others as they work in the areas. And as mining and drilling continues in these areas, it's important to have true documentation of what was done in the past. Thank you for spending this time with us, and have a great afternoon. Goodbye.